Welcome to the best hour of their day podcast with your hosts, Jason Fernandez
and me, Jason Ackerman. With more than 20 years in the business,
as both coaches and affiliate owners,
our passion is to help create world-class affiliates
and coaches by building
better boxes. Welcome to
the best hour of your day. All right, everybody, welcome back to talk about the thing that everybody loves and hates the most, all at the same time. Money. No better person than my man, Nick True. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Well, I mean, look, we're getting to talk about two of my favorite things. So, I like talking about health. I like talking about money. It's
There you go. Nick was just telling me that he watched the entire CrossFit games while sitting in a beach chair, which is, I think, how you should watch the CrossFit games.
It was a great, I was telling Fernand, it was totally happenstance. We didn't plan this. We had booked this trip over a year ago, but it just so happened to work out that we were at the beach during the games. And I think next year I'm like, man, if I don't end up trying to figure out how to go, that's probably the place to watch them. It was nice.
Yeah, it's great. Which I think is actually a pretty solid kind of segue into this, because I don't know what the attendance at the games was this year, but from what I'm told, they were happy with it. I don't know if that's good or bad. I have no idea what the expectation was, but from what Don Fall said, that they were, the numbers were positive. So tons and tons of people there, which is not a cheap trip.
No.
For a lot of people.
No.
And because a lot of people are there, the number of people that are there like Wednesday to Monday is, I would venture to say it's at least 30 to 40% of people that do that. So, and that's kind of what we wanted to talk about a little bit today, which is kind of this kind of like, I guess some people consider like this foo-foo thing, but like, how do you create this vision for yourself? And then more importantly, obviously all of our listeners are gym owners. Where's the overlap, or how's that Venn diagram work with, like, I've got my personal vision. Where does the gym factor in with regard to that to help me drive decision-making or planning with regard to my money? Because they're not independent of each other. Like, if you're a small business owner, you are not independent of the business. You might be legally, but that's not how it practically works.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm all like, we'll get into why this is so important here in a second, but to use a coaching analogy that I think goes like, well, duh, right? Is the reason that this topic is so important is because we want to use the vision to help you answer questions of what should you do and help you prioritize and help you strategize. And so if you have someone come into the gym and they're like, I'm probably overeating. I know I'm probably like 40, 50 pounds overweight. I haven't worked out in a decade. But I want to get healthy. The type of programming and the type of nutrition planning that you would give that person is going to be very different than somebody who's consistently I hit quarterfinals and I really want to try to go to the games this year. It's
right.
Okay, cool. We have wildly different goals and wildly different visions for what the next year could look like. The programming and the nutrition and everything probably should look different, right? It's yes, of course.
Yeah. And you also have, you talk about that second athlete, the ladder, the game, or whoever's trying to do that. There comes a level of compliance that is assumed with that athlete. Oh, you're going to follow the rules, which is what we know is one of the bigger hurdles with a newer athlete or somebody who's starting that journey. And it's no different than with money. I talked about this at the mastermind we had in Denver a few months ago. And it's really easy to fall off any new endeavor because you feel like the world is working against you. You're like, hey, I'm going to start doing a budget. And then bam, new HVAC system. You're like, fuck it, budgeting isn't for me.
Yep.
It's like, no. That's exactly why you should be doing this. So,
yeah, it is. No, it is. And it's it's so funny too, right, man? I think I've shared on this podcast a couple of times. I've been, I'm still fair. I would still consider myself fairly new to CrossFit and trying to get my health and everything dialed in. And so, as I'm trying to continually dial in mostly nutrition is where I struggle the most. It's I'll catch myself giving the same excuses that someone gives me for budgeting. Right. And so it's with budgeting, the HVAC system's a great example. They'll go, oh man, freaking how I couldn't have predicted that. Like, I'm done. I'm not even going to try. And it's like, really? You couldn't think through the fact that like HVACs have a certain lifespan and they probably do go out and we
Yeah.
could probably like, it's
It
like,
has
me, it's
a
like, oh, my
10-year
birthday.
warranty and you're at 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like with my nutrition, I'll be like, well, man, it was my birthday this week. I mean, I got to eat this, and it's like, oh, really? You couldn't plan for the fact that you have a birthday every year at the same time and you couldn't think about that last week?
Yeah. My example for that with affiliate owners, there's two that I hear from affiliate owners and that I've given myself all the time. Insurance and your affiliate fees. I'm like, you've paid those every year since you opened an affiliate. Yeah. Maybe we should plan a little better for them. Yeah. It's the same thing. Now, the counter to this is like, I can see how that would be potentially like overwhelming. You're like, all right, so I'm supposed to plan for every future scenario that could ever happen. Like, okay, now I have no money because I'm planning for catastrophic events 1 through 7. They're like, all right, what if a nuclear bomb goes off and then I have to, I'm like, should I be budgeting for 4 months worth of food storage? Like, this is like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. And I've had a couple of clients that basically have a grocery budget for groceries and a grocery budget for food prep, seal, pack, and storage. So we won't go down that
route. What percentage of your hardcore budgeters are also preppers, Nick?
It's not as high as you'd think, but
okay,
there's a Venn diagram overlap for sure.
Okay, fair enough.
For sure.
Got it.
Okay, but like going back to why this is so important, right? It's here's some recent questions that have come up over the last just the last month and a half in some of the conversations I've had. Hey, I'm thinking about hiring a manager for the gym. How do I think about what I can spend, what I can't spend? Hey, I'd like to hire a new coach. How do I think about that? Hey, we're actually pretty profitable. Things are going well. I'm stacking cash. What should I do with it? I'm kind of thinking I might want to buy a building, but I also not sure. Could I pay myself more? Should I just invest that money? Could I put it in a CD? Because I'm not really sure. These types of questions, I initially have the same answer for everybody, which is well, I need to know what your vision is. I need to know what you personally are wanting this gym and your life to become over the next couple of years, so that then we can figure out how to prioritize the cash, because the cash is just a tool to help you do the things on your vision. And so in order to make decisions, we have to know what the vision is.
And the reason I have the same conversation with people about their core values. Mm-hmm. So doing the hard kind of the deep work involved with creating the parameters, the vision, the roadmap for decision-making is probably one of the more important things you could ever do. And most people skip it. Most entrepreneurs, forget CrossFit gyms, just generally speaking, most people skip it, which means you're kind of just floating around in the ether with no true guidance or no way to get back on track or know that you're off track.
Yeah.
And not until, at least personally and in the gym, and sat down and said, what do we want? Like literally no shit. What do we want? How much do we want? What do we want to be able to do? Then it starts to really guide decision-making. And I tell you what it really does. It makes for clean conversations.
Yeah.
About money, whether it's with my team or with my spouse, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, and it also, it helps clean conversations, and it helps with clean thinking, because one of the biggest traps is comparison, right? And this is just a natural human thing, whether it's, comparing your money, comparing your fitness, comparing your businesses, whatever, where you're going, okay, well, so-and-so runs a gym and they make this much, or they pay themselves this much, or they bought their building. Should I be doing those things? Or, so-and-so's in the nutrition or health example, it's like so-and-so's, programming looks like this and they're eating like that. Should I be doing that? And it seems really obvious when you use the health and fitness example, because it goes, well, they might have totally different ambitions than you have.
Right.
And so you probably shouldn't be paying attention to that. You should probably be coming up with a plan based on your ambitions. And yet I think with business and with money, it's very easy to forget that. And it's very tempting to want to know, like, okay, well, what percentage of revenue do I pay this person, or what percentage of revenue do I pay myself, or what percentage of this do I do that? And it's like, whoa. What do you want? Because your ambitions and your goals and your desires for your life might be wildly different than mine or Fern's or anybody else's. And so why don't we stop thinking about other people and start thinking about what you want, and then just have clean and clear thinking to move forward towards that?
Well, that's where I was going is, I'm thinking of hiring a GM or all these other things. And I'm like, or sometimes that vision just, Joel Cochran said this he's like, yes and no are complete sentences. Sometimes that vision is just a clean no. Be like, oh no, you shouldn't do that. Why? Because you're not paying yourself what you wanted. So we're definitely not going to give that to somebody else before we give it to you, because we need to make sure that you're squared away first.
Yes.
Now we can start bringing it in, because inevitably what'll happen, I don't know this because I've done it probably 80,000 times. You're like, I'll pay. I'm going to get this up and running, and then I'll pay myself the money.
Yeah.
And that day never comes.
No.
There will always be something that will replace
Yep.
that current thing that you're dealing with, until you learn to prioritize whatever you decided was important. But there will always be another thing that will come up. You're like, oh, well, I want to do this. I want to do that. And okay, well, I'll just do it. I'll wait a little bit longer. And I'm like, well, now you're violating your own rules.
Yeah.
But if you don't have any rules, then it's easy. But if you do have rules, you're like, oh shit, you got me.
Yep. It also, like, one thing I'll say before we get into maybe the meat of how I talk about creating a vision is, I want to always point out that it's okay for your vision to change too, right? So, like,
I feel like it should.
It has to.
Yeah.
Because as your life changes, your personal vision is going to change, and so therefore, the way you want to run the gym might change. And so, like, Fern, I wanted to ask you, because I actually don't know the answers to some of these questions, so I thought it'd be fun to just ask you. Is like,
I'm going to lie just for the purpose of the show.
Tell me about something that would have been a goal of yours or a vision of yours personally when you first opened your gym. Like, what were you hoping to accomplish?
Oh, I think I remember the days of like competing, and I wanted to, I desperately wanted to, have a competitive team and go to the games.
Okay. And how did that work out for you?
I mean, I did get injured in 2013, so that is why I didn't make it to the games. Okay. Well, that's not why I didn't make it to the games. It was probably just a sign to be like, hey, hang it up, dude. No, I did get injured, and that forced me to kind of rethink like where is spending my time and energy. Mm-hmm. And that became, it was not a thing after that. It wasn't even like backseat. It was just like, oh, I'm not pursuing that anymore. Like, that makes no sense for me and what I want to do. And it hasn't been on the table since. So
when that happened, what then started to, like, walk me through kind of a transition of how maybe parts of your vision or personal life, or your goals, or whatever you want to call it, has changed over time, right? So at one point you wanted to take a team to the games, got injured, decided don't want to do that anymore. Then what?
Well, what happens is all of your time gets reprioritized. So my time training and doing all of that now gets reprioritized into, okay, well, I need to develop a team, like a team for the business, not a team to go to the games. I need to become a better coach. I need to learn more about business. So I took all of that time, or a good chunk of it, and then repurposed it into starting to develop a different set of skills in order to achieve the goal, which is like, oh, I want to run a really healthy, profitable, fun business, which has virtually nothing to do with how much I work out every day.
Cool. And then how has the gym changed since then? So since what, 2014, 15?
Oh God, I am going to write a book on that. It couldn't have changed more.
Okay.
So it was just kind of your prototypical 2007, bro gym, dirty, disorganized, very lax in professional demeanor, to now we spend a lot of time trying to build a good team, trying to build a good experience, thinking a lot about customer service, and thinking a lot more, much less about ourselves and much more about the customer. How do we better serve the customer? How do we create that experience? How do we design their actual experience? You know, if they're here for a long time, how do we design the space? How do we design the classes? How do we make sure they get what they want? So I guess I could sum that up in, it was me, and then it's transitioned to them, because that was how I would be able to serve me on the back end, which is like, I would have the freedom, I would have the impact, I would have the outcome that I was looking for, whether it be money or time or whatever. I would be able to have access to all of those things if I ran a really good business.
Cool. So the vision for the gym has changed significantly because, or in some ways, right, going from this sort of like, you know, whatever, unprofessional, like you said, dirty, and just kind of like almost like a ragtag style approach. And that's transformed significantly there. And the vision that you had for the gym changed in order to make that happen. But you just said that it also helps serve you personally because it helps you create some of the income, some of the impact, the freedom, some of the stuff that you wanted on the back end. So tell me about some of the things that you were hoping for on the back end back then, and then bring us to like now in terms of like, how has the way you've built the gym changed what you've been able to do in your personal life?
Probably the biggest, not probably, soft talk. The biggest change would be, as an athlete, I was chasing an event.
Okay.
Yeah, to win, right? It's an event. When we're talking about competing in any sport, there's a culminating event. You either get to the finals and you win or you don't. When the mindset shift happens to, oh, I'm trying to design and develop and craft a career, now the time frame is unlimited. The time frame is forever. I continue to do this forever, at which point you look at things through a different lens. You become much more patient. As an athlete, you have a finite time frame. Like, you know, if you're a CrossFitter, you have, call it 35. And at that point, I was almost at that age anyway.
Yeah.
So with that, it changes how you view things. It changes how you interact with people. It changes the places you invest, you know, things like that, where I'm looking for knowledge at this point and was at the time. And so those are probably the biggest. The road is significantly longer, right? So like if you're looking to compete, the goalpost is fairly close. When you're like, oh, I want to run a thriving business, the goalpost all of a sudden just shoots out into infinity. And you're like, oh, I have forever.
Yeah.
As long as I continue to evolve and iterate and get better, I will very likely end up very close to the X.
Yeah. And I know this sounds like, you know, we're probably just beating a dead horse here, but I can't overstate how much some of the clarity that you just said massively impacts the decisions that you're going to make around your gym budget and your gym finances and the decisions that you make in the gym. Because if you're running it with this like big time horizon with a long-term goal of having some impact and having some freedom and those sorts of things, the decisions that you're going to make are going to be wildly different than if you're, you know, focused on a short-term event or something like that, or whatever.
I mean, if you wanted to make it like even more tangible, let's just say, because this actually is true, I want to buy either this building or another building.
Okay.
Just that alone, do the math on any of it. Let's just say it's 1.5 to 2 million. That's probably pretty close in most areas. Some areas you can get it for less than $1 million. Good for you guys. I hate you. You got to come up with 20% of that.
Yeah.
So at which point now, obviously you can get money a lot of different ways, but primarily you would be funding that through your business, where like there would be a set aside where you would say, hey, the business would pay for the acquisition of this new asset. We have to run a profitable business. Like you have to make hard decisions. You have to think about little things about how you design your membership structure, how you, what you do with merchant fees. Like you have to, this all goes down like way into the weeds based on, oh, I want to buy a $2 million asset. Okay, well that's that what you're going to need in order to do that is going to be the compounding of 1,000 little micro decisions in order to get you there.
And what do you think are your top, because obviously it's a multifaceted decision, but like what do you think are your top 1, 2, 3 reasons for why you want to buy a building instead of just keep renting?
Longevity. To go back to where I wanted to do was I wanted to create a long-term career. And in most instances, if you run a brick and mortar, one of the safer ways to do that is to own the land, because now I'm not subject to the market with regard to rent prices. I can keep my operating expenses much more stable. You'll have some fluctuation in energy costs and stuff like that, but those will be nominal compared to your rent going up 3 to 25% in some instances, because suddenly the market takes a swing and the landlord's like, oh, I can get twice this rate for another tenant. I know we've seen that happen. And those are the things that makes you working with a client right now who's kind of dealing with a scenario like that. And those are a lot of the reasons that is a factor, because I don't want that volatility present in my future. And how do I do that? Well, I have to start thinking now, like, what does my future self want? My future self wants as much stability as is realistic in my whatever my future holds.
There we go. I think that's part of the key, right? It's like the two things you said. So if I'm looking at Fern's like vision doc, I would expect to see something on there related to valuing stability and something on there related to long-term goal of like, running a gym business. Let's just leave it like that, right? It's like long-term goal of helping people get healthier and fitter and have a physical location to do that, right? Like if you ask me what's on my vision, it's purposely vague because I don't know what this will look like in 20 years, but I can tell you right now that the thing that I enjoy most is helping people learn to better manage their money and make decisions with their money.
Right.
And so I'm like, I would like to spend the bulk of my time doing that. Maybe it'll look different in 10 years. I don't know. But like so what I'm hearing you say is like, I would like to spend a lot of time helping people get healthier and fitter and have a gym business. And I would like to have more stability.
And that has evolved for me, because where I found like he's going back to where you said change, obviously here at Best Hour that we do that at a different scale.
Totally.
So it has to go down a couple levels and say, okay, well, I need to have a thriving gym, and to some degree at some point, as both of those businesses grow, that gym will need to thrive to some degree absent of my presence there, because it will inevitably get pulled in other directions. So how do you do that? Well, you need to create financial stability, and then you need to create team stability. And then that allows me to go do the other thing, because not only do I want to create, health and fitness for people in my gym, I want to do that all over the world. So that vision just got infinitely larger, which says, oh, well, now you have to do this in multiple areas. So how do you do that so that you can make decisions that are in the best interest of the client versus you trying to survive in certain instances?
Totally. And it's well, so let me jump into this.
Okay.
I thought, if you're cool with it, I thought I'm gonna just share my screen.
Yeah.
And
you should be able to do that.
Just kind of show what I mean when I say this, right? So
for those of you that don't subscribe to our YouTube channel, you should, so that you can see this.
Yeah, come over here. Come over, hang out. All right, so cool. So we can see that. Good, great. So this is kind of just a typical template that I use. I can share.
So we're looking at for those of you not watching this, you're just looking at a Word document. It says life vision template, and it's got values and priorities, and then it's basically got like a table on it that you would fill in.
Yeah. And so I'll explain each section as we go. I'm going to skip past the templated part and just show you guys a section of mine and Hannah's. This is one that I've pulled off of our vision doc. So this is a doc that we update every single quarter. We take at least a full day to do this, in addition to a few other things. But the 3 core section is values and priorities, and then ideal day, and then a timeline. And so I want to speak briefly about each, and ultimately work in how this is going to impact your gym. So values and priorities, these are not values like hard work and integrity, right? Those are like given values. These are values that help you make decisions on a big scale for your life. And so an example that we have given recently is that on our list of top values and priorities is living in an area that we love, living in a climate that we love, living in an area we love. That matters a whole lot to us. There's a lot of areas that I wouldn't want to live in. And we spent a lot of time traveling, and we found a number of places we loved. And in 2020, we moved to a city that we loved. We lived down near the beach, down in South Alabama, right near the Florida Panhandle. We loved it. It was awesome. We were in a super walkable town down there. And then over the last year and a half, a bunch of things changed in our life, and we realized that we had our priorities slightly out of order, and we wanted to move back home. To be near family for this next season of our life. And so we ended up adjusting the way that we had ranked some of our values and priorities. And we ended up selling our house in Alabama and moved back home to Tennessee. And it was through some of these conversations that we were able to try and start to put some wording on that. So that's the idea here behind values and priorities. Some people value a number of things, and then that, however, the different values you have are going to drastically impact the type of business you build, the way you build it, and the way you structure a lot of things in your life.
Right.
The next section is an ideal day. So this is not, we don't hit this every single day, but we're getting pretty close on Monday through Friday. And so I won't.
Can I address the ideal day? I think a lot of people misinterpret the ideal day.
Please,
I think a lot of people think of the ideal day as like, oh, I go to the beach and then I drink mimosas all day. And it's just like, that is in fact an ideal day, but that's not what we're referring to. Yeah. That is an ideal day. When you're doing this exercise, because we have people do this in Affiliate U, I've done it many, many times. It should be like your ideal normal day.
Yes.
Right. Like not on vacation, your ideal normal day. And when people submit, my first question is, how close are you to this?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're actually pretty close.
Yeah. And that doesn't surprise me for gym owners, right? Like you've got to be a pretty disciplined person already. And so I'm not super surprised if they're decently close. But I think a lot of people, it's really easy to not ever ask this question.
Right.
And so then it's like, well, it might end up being kind of different if you really sat down and thought about it, because many people just end up in their routine in a manner that they just kind of drifted into it. They never actually sat down and thought about it. But yeah, no, I appreciate you pointing it out. So like for us, if you're just listening in, like some of the things on this list are like, I'm up at 4 a.m. I jump into like a Bible study and a coffee. And I did that because we actually used to try and get up at 4 and work out, and we found ourselves skipping that. And I would skip the early classes.
Because working out in the morning is dumb.
But also like,
I don't care what Jocko says, it's dumb.
I don't like, and I like working out. I really do. But something about knowing that I'm literally going to wake up and like basically immediately work out. It wasn't like getting us excited to get out of bed. And so we switched it up. And so it's like, now we get up, like we cook a little eggs, drink coffee, we enter the morning together. Luckily Hannah and I we don't have kids yet. So we have a lot of control.
Once you have kids, that you literally will never have a perfect day for the rest of your life.
Well, I believe that. I totally
no,
believe that.
I'm kidding. But it definitely throws a wrench in there. Yeah, it changes.
So then we work out, then shower, and then like I'm sitting down at my desk to work by 9. And I try hard to get an afternoon walk in. I try to wrap up, around 6 or 7 for dinner. And then Hannah and I do like a quick check-in for the day. And then, because we're trying to get up at 4, we're trying to get in bed by, 8:39, start reading and be sleeping by 9:30. And that's Monday through Friday, right? That's like our goal. And that ultimately does impact our personal budget and our business budget, depending on what's on here and how we structure it, especially things like food and groceries and stuff. The next little section is an ideal weekend. We think about these things as like a menu of options. So think about it like, I don't do everything on my list every weekend because I've got things on here like hiking, going to the Smokies, biking, camping, Frisbee, working on our building. I don't do every single thing on this list every weekend, but it helps us be a little bit more intentional to not just like veg out in front of the TV on a weekend, but instead say, hey, yeah, these are the things that like an ideal weekend would include. What are we doing this weekend to try and be a little bit more intentional with it?
Yeah, this is similar to, so when we do the Ideal Class experience, when we help gyms develop that, one of the things we'll put on, or we recommend them having there, is there a social element?
Yeah.
And by definition, meaning like, Nick and I would be partnered during the warm up or the cool down. That would be a social element. And people are always asking about that. They're like, do I have to fill that out every single time? I'm like, no, it doesn't have that. You don't have to check that box every time.
Yeah.
But by having it there, it will tell you if you never check it.
Yeah.
At which point you're like, oh, okay, I should probably put some effort into that because that is what we defined as an Ideal Class experience. Now, is it realistic to do every single time? No, but it shows here that I do it 5% of the time. I'm like, probably 25 to 30 would be
better,
more realistic and be better. So then we can make the adjustment. And this is kind of the same thing that you're alluding to here.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. Like it's if I was going to go audit, my ideal week or my ideal weekend, it needs to have like some of these things in it. And then the next section is the part that helps us most answer questions of like, what do we do with money? Right. And so I'll zoom in a little bit more, but we have like basically a timeline for 1, 3, 5 years. We break these up into life, family and relationships, and then finance, wealth, career. And then, like I said, I have like 2024, 2026, 2028. And this shouldn't be like a 10-page business plan, right? Like the goal is just to have some bullet points at a high level.
Right.
But the idea is that if we think about what you want your personal life to look like over the next couple of years, what are some hobbies you want to pursue? What are some habits you want to build? What are some places you want to travel? What types of things are on that list? Family and relationships. If you've got kids, thinking about how old are each of my kids going to be in 1, 3, and 5 years? What are some skills that I've hoped to have passed along or some experiences that I've hoped to have done with them by that time? And then for finance, wealth, and career, how much do I want to be paying myself in, a year, 3 years, 5 years? Do I want to buy property? Do I not want to buy property? For me and Hannah, a lot of this planning has to do with our business, which, is about money and managing money. And then we do have some real estate. And so we talk about that on our Airbnb and commercial kind of space. And then, if you look down here by 2026, we hope to have figured out, like, are we trying to buy either a house for us or are we going to buy a short-term rental property? And so right now we're saving money for a down payment, but I'm not even sure yet if that's going to go towards a home for us or a short-term rental property. And that's okay, because I know that we're going to update this vision every quarter and we'll make that decision when it feels like the right time to make the decision. But directionally, I know I need to be saving a down payment right now because I know I'm going to want to buy property at some point in the next few years.
Right.
Is this kind of making sense?
It makes a ton of sense. And the one thing I do want to point out here is that whether you're doing this alone as a gym owner or whether you're, and even more importantly, if you're doing it with a significant other or an additional person, right? Whether it's you and your spouse or your business partner, you have to write it down. You have to write it down. And it seems like really silly, but you have to write it down because that way it now becomes real for both parties. The number of times my wife and I have like had a discussion that like maybe one of us was in a different headspace than the other one, or like more checked in, or we thought that was a final decision when it was more of a discussion in those scenarios. This makes it official. Be like, we wrote it down. This is what we both agreed upon, and bring the document back out and say, like, are we abiding by this? Yeah. And it's not that you're beholden to it. If you decide you want to change it, you change it. But the point is like, oh, we literally wrote that down. So like you're keeping yourself accountable. So that is one of the more important things. Like you have to write it down. Otherwise, I can almost assuredly tell you there will be a miscommunication or a misinterpretation about a conversation that you had one day when you were talking about it.
Totally. Well, and it comes back to the document then becomes like the judge and the jury on a decision rather than like each other. Right. And so like if I'm thinking about, like if we're trying to make a decision about should we make a large purchase, either personal life or inside the business, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the vision doc and I'm just going to go like, is this even on here? You know, it's like if when I'm coaching somebody, if I've known them for a while, even like 3 to 6 months, and we've had discussions about their vision and their direction and their goals and what they're going on, and then they show up one day and they're like, "Yeah, so I bought a new car over the weekend," and I'm like, "Dude, I've literally never heard you talk about like needing a new car at all since I met you. Where did that come? Like, what are you doing? Where did that come? Right?" And it's like, so either did your vision change or did you write down the wrong, like, did you lie the first time you did it? Or did your vision change? Or did you not look at the vision to help it remind you of what you said was the most important thing? Because it's got to be one of those three. And that's,
and my wife and I are having like very similar discussions, like in the past 2 months, like one of our HVAC units and our refrigerator both shit the bed. Both. And I'm like, God, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So then it's like, hey, we were going to do this upgrade to the kitchen. So I was like, are we going to do that? Now we haven't made a decision on it, but I'm like, okay, do we want to do that now? How do we want to do that? Or do we want to push it off to try to hit some more short-term goals? Yes. Because the likelihood of us, saying, hey, we want to get, so for instance, like, because we talked about this before, let's say, okay, let's get 3 months ahead.
Yep.
Okay, well, if we get 3 months ahead, doing all these projects actually gets way faster. So we could do them all in one. We could do them all in one shot, and we wouldn't even bat an eye. We'd be like, oh, we would actually enjoy it. So I'm like, all right, do we hold off on that? Like, how do we do this? Like, so but it goes back to like we had kind of outlined some of those, and then you throw a little wrinkle in there, but then you have the discussion based on, oh, okay, we're gonna do it this way, and here's how we can manage it. And but going back to that, like, hey, here's what we want to do. Because then we can do all of those things and they won't be stressful. They'll be completely stress-free.
Yes. And so to take this one step further, right? Like I'm going to scroll back up here to this value section that we started with. So some of the things that Hannah and I value are like control over our time, freedom and flexibility to pivot, involvement in our community, supporting extended family, having an active and healthy lifestyle. These are some of the things that we have that are on our values list. If I have written down some of these things that I value, when I scroll down to the timeline section, I need to make sure that I see things in here that will help me live an active and healthy lifestyle. Things in here that will continually give me more control over my time. Things in here that will help me be more involved in my community. Things in here that give me new experiences and travel to new places. That's where I'm trying to make sure that I'm actually putting my money where my mouth is and aligning those things. And so for us, you're going to see like when you scroll down to like, let's say 2026, you'll notice that there's some stuff around. So for example, a big thing that we're putting a lot of money and time and effort into is this building that we bought, right? It's not a gym building. It's a commercial space that we're turning into a co-working space with an Airbnb attached to it. So with this particular thing, I'm putting a ton of time into this right now. And we're putting a ton of effort into getting this thing done, getting the renovations done, getting everything up and running. Well, by 2026, this thing more or less should be running with very minimal involvement from me.
Right.
And generating hopefully 6 to 7K a month in top line revenue. And so it's like, cool, we do that. Then by the time it's all said and done, we've got, $1,500 to $2,500 a month in profit that's coming to us with minimal work, which then directly supports our values of flexibility and freedom to pivot and control over our time.
Right. So if we were to just change this out for a gym owner and say, hey, flexibility and freedom, pivot, control over our time. And you're like, well, hey, what should I be? And then I see you spending a ton of money on stupid shit like barbells that you don't need, or, you know, you're going to buy the new assault rower or something like that, which is like, hey, listen, where you should be spending that money on a monthly basis is like budgeting it so that you can build a team, which would then therefore give you time to do that. So, and I've had this conversation with people who are resistant to budgeting, and they're telling me what they want. I'm like, well, you know, you can just budget for that. They're like, hey, I want to do this. And they're like, oh, I didn't connect the dots on this is what the budget is useful for. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people just associate budgeting with just constraint.
Yes.
When it's not constraint, it's actually liberating if you do it correctly. Spend your money wherever you want. I don't care. But if you want to be able to spend it wherever you want, then you have to control it. Which is important. I was reading a book, and I've referenced it several times on the podcast, called Unreasonable Hospitality. It's about the guy who opened 11th Madison Park and the Nomad restaurant. It's a fantastic book. I've enjoyed it more than any book I've read in a very long time. And he calls it the 95 and 5 rule. He says, he's like, you're going to manage 95% of your budget to the penny. And he's like, you're going to be just ruthless about it. And then he said 5% you're going to spend lavishly, because that 5% has outsized return when you spend it. But in order to spend 5% lavishly, you have to manage the 95%. You have
to be
ruthless. Yeah, like a dictator. Yeah.
I love that.
And I was like, oh, that's a fantastic way to look at that.
I love that.
But going into like, what does he want to achieve? He wanted to give people the best possible experience in the restaurant. And in order to do that, he had to come up with all sorts of wacky ideas that have nothing to do with food.
How funny.
You know? But it just to kind of go back to that, like when people are struggling with certain things and they're telling me or you in some of these instances, like, here's what I want. And then I'm like, hey, do you have a budget in place? They're like, no. And I'm like, well, you know, having a budget in place would help you very quickly come to a determination on, are you on track? Are you not on track? Or do we just need to adjust the budget and you're good to go?
Yep. Well, and that's, so like one thing you said that I want to go back and hit on is this idea of constraint, right? Like a lot of people feel that budgeting is constraining. That's the huge benefit of having the vision, is that then you're able to clearly connect why we're budgeting. It's not just to penny pinch for fun.
No,
it is to help you increase the likelihood that you achieve the things on your vision. That's why.
Yeah, my wife and I, we would argue we have arguably spent more lavishly than we have in the past, but we do it stress free now. We're like, we made a decision, that's where we want to put our money, and then we went on this vacation, or we bought a property or something, like stuff that we would have never been able to do prior to, you know, making the same amount of money. And you're like, oh, okay.
It's like, did I tell you about the fenced-in yard analogy?
No.
Okay, so I'll share the story. So here's the idea. Imagine you have two houses right next door to each other on a very busy highway. Both houses.
Is this myself and Jason Ackerman? Because I don't want to live next to him.
It's you and Jay right next to each other. And let's say that Jay has a 9-year-old son who really wants to go and play out in the front yard. But you guys live on a busy highway. And so he's constantly saying like, hey, no, you cannot go out and play in the front yard. Like, and only sometimes does he let him go out, but he makes him stay like right next to the house and like really keep an eye. Now, let's say you see all this happening and let's say you also have a 9-year-old son who also wants to go play on the front yard. And you go, well, you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build a fence. I'm just going to build a fence right around the front of my yard. Now, technically, your house now has more constraints on it because you have a fence. Whereas Jay's house, he's got this nice open yard out front, this wide open space. But because there's this super dangerous, busy highway, when you let your kid go out to play inside the fence, he actually has more freedom than Jay's. Because we know, hey, there's a boundary here that's in place to protect you. You can run all the way up to the boundary. You can go all the way to the edge. You can run back and forth. You can do whatever you want. And we're not concerned about it because we know that boundary is going to protect you. That's what budgeting is for. it's putting boundaries in place that protect you to make sure that we keep the most important things on track. And so it looks like a constraint. It looks like this thing that's going to take away, but it's actually something that creates more freedom.
Yeah, that's the kind of, again, to quote Jocko, the discipline equals freedom. Totally. If you have the discipline to stay inside of that, then you have the freedom to do whatever you want inside of there.
Totally.
Yeah, and I've learned that because I think I can't remember which one we started. Yeah, I'm over a year using YNAB, and I'm like, I fully bought in. Everybody that's like, I don't know, and I'm like, listen, it'll change your life, right? Like, just do it. I promise you won't regret it. You'll be able to do more stuff than you've ever imagined just by it's control, right? It actually gives you back control. But then that control, kind of going back to where you were, or what we're talking about today, is the control needs to be buffered with some sort of, not constraint, but we could call it constraint, with some sort of guidelines. Yeah. And that's kind of where what you reference is like value-based budgeting.
Yes. Yeah. So the idea of like, there's sort of two overarching ways that I like to talk about values-based budgeting. So to try and summarize where we're at to this point, you can't budget, you can't manage your money well unless you know what you want to do with your money. How do you know what you want to do with your money? You create a vision for where you're trying to go for your personal life. And then that informs how you should build your gym. Because there's some gym owners, I imagine, that listen to this that are like, their goal is to get to a place where they really want to like not do coaching, not be like in the weeds. They want to have a GM and they want to like be able to pop in, pop out, and but be out of the day-to-day operations of the gym. And then there's others who are like, I think like no matter where I get to, I will always want to be pretty involved in it. And that's cool. Like you get to decide your level of involvement and where your vision wants to go. And you have to have that vision to make a decision. So then when we start taking it one step further into this idea of like values-based budgeting, it's this idea that like the budget should be a tool to help you do the things that matter the most. And that means living according to the values that you have. And I think you can talk about this as I value things that give me freedom, that give me control. I value giving back. I value making an impact. And we can look at your budget through that lens and make sure that you're actually using money to do that. But then the other thing that I wanted to bring up today, because it's tangentially related, is if vision helps you make big long-term decisions, like do I buy a building? Do I not?
Right.
Do I hire a GM? Do I not? What I would call like micro values-based budgeting helps you make in the moment spending decisions. So I'll give you an example on the personal side, and then we'll do one on the business side too. Fern, let's say that me and Hannah come up to visit you. We drive up and I text you and I'm like, hey dude, we're in town. Like, let's go out to eat. You know, what's the best place? I've never even been here. What's your favorite spot? Where would we go?
Probably go to Steinhilber's in Virginia Beach. It's a little hidden gem.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Well, not anymore. But okay, so
I just told everybody.
Let's say we go there. So there's me, you, your wife, my wife. So we got 4 people. And let's say I'm like, dude, I don't even know what's good here. You just order for me.
Mm-hmm.
What am I eating?
Probably they have like these filet medallions that are like just out of this world good.
Sounds good. Okay, perfect. So we all order the filet medallions. So let's say we all go Dutch too. So we all just pay for our own. So all 4 of us are eating the same meal at the same time at the same restaurant, paying the same money for the same thing. And yet we might be doing it for wildly different reasons. One of us might be spending this money because we worked from home all day and we just wanted to get out of the house and we wanted novelty or some new environment, a new experience. One of us might be doing it because we just didn't want to have to cook and clean. And like, we didn't really care where we went. We just wanted the convenience of having someone else deal with this for us.
Right.
One of us might be doing it for the social atmosphere. We actually also don't care that much about where we're at. It's really just going out with friends. And then maybe one of us truly is going for the food itself. And like the value is the food and the enjoyment of the food. The point is, whenever you go to buy something for your business or for your personal life, you are not ever buying just the thing. You are buying some underlying value that you hope that thing provides.
Can I give a personal example
Please.
of this? You brought it up. This just happened maybe less than a month ago. We had some friends in town, and they came over and they stayed with us, and then we went out for dinner. And kind of before dinner, like, we have a budget. It's like dining out budget. And for whatever reason, like, we hadn't spent any of it. Like, we just hadn't spent any of it in probably well over a month. So there's like plenty in there.
Yeah.
So like halfway through dinner, I kind of, catch the waitress off to the side. I'm like, hey, I'll one ticket, and at the end it turns into typical, like, oh, you can't do this. We want to pay. And I told him, I was like, hey, listen, I was very upfront. I said, we budget for this. This is what we enjoy doing. It has nothing to do with money. Like, I wanted to enjoy this experience. I hope you guys enjoy it. I am actually very, very happy and delighted to get the check, because I planned for it, and this is literally what this money was intended for. And if I don't get to spend it there, I'm actually not going to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
As stupid as that sounds.
No, I love it.
I was just like, it's like, as stupid as that sounds, it's like, if you don't let me pay the check, I'm actually going to be upset, because this is what it was for. It wasn't for dinner.
Yeah.
It was for the experience with all of you.
Yep.
That's what I budgeted this for. And it actually makes me feel good to do that. So it's that's a real life example of that. And it was just like, it wasn't like, oh, you baller, you're going to get a big check. And I was like, no, it didn't matter what the check was. I knew I was going to be able to cover it. And that's what it was for.
Yeah.
That's why we have it, so that we can go out and so that we can have those experiences. So the dining out isn't like, I want to spend this much money on food. It's like, I want to go out and I want to have a good experience. And if I can have a better experience because I can cover the check with my friends, because it makes me feel good, because I genuinely enjoy their companionship, even better. Even better.
I love that. And that's like, and a lot of people, I think some people might be listening and going, okay, but cool, I get it for personal, but like, I'm not sure how this applies like in a business context, because it can be a little bit tricky, because it seems very straightforward in a personal context.
Yeah, but it's not. I could give the same examples inside of the gym, which is just like, hey, if you don't have, again, people have been be like, hey, we really want to do like extended access, and I have like a facility and maintenance budget for the gym, and I could spend that on all sorts of stuff. Yep. People want all sorts of silly shit in the gym.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, it's time that we do that. That's what everybody's been asking for. That's literally what that money is there for. Let's go ahead and do that. Yeah. So we're setting that up right now. And I'm like, okay, great. We're cool. Using Hybrid AF, and, shout out to those guys. But that was set aside. It was there. It was a line item. We're like, hey, we want to do that. And I'm like, cool. I'd love to make you guys happy. Let's go ahead and make it so.
Well, and how many times, because you're human, right? Which means like your own emotions get in the way of your decision making. How many times is it tempting to pay for things that make your ego feel better, make your status feel better, right? Rather than like are truly the best for the business, right?
Well, they're always tempting. What I find is that they're no longer tempting when you've planned for them, because the reason for doing so is different. Yeah, it was preemptive. Meaning, so like if it's an ego thing, I would, at least in my experience, the ego things are very typically spontaneous. Comes up and I'm like, oh, yep, that guy's can't outdo me, and then I'm gonna do that. Versus like, oh, I've been planning for this, so it doesn't matter. I didn't walk into here and all of a sudden get an ego. Totally. Like it was preemptive in nature. Totally. Now that could be egotistical as well, but for most of it's not.
No, but so that's why I'm saying, right, that's where the values-based budgeting comes into play. And so like if you're running your gym without a vision, without a plan, and without a budget, you're human. It's going to be really tempting to just give into the impulse purchases of, oh, well, so-and-so just got a new, whatever. I want to get one now because our gym needs to be able to show that we have this or whatever. Or, like I've seen a lot of people get into ego trips around like the number of people on their team. So it's like, I literally just want to be able to say, well, I have this many people that work for me.
Oh yeah.
And it's like
I'm looking at the payroll number. I'm like, ugh.
I'm like, what? That doesn't seem like the reason to hire somebody. That does not seem like right. And so it's really easy if you're not careful. If you're not thinking through the spending, again, not in like a constraint way, but through like what is the underlying value that this thing provides? Is that what I truly need to be spending money on right now? And then the third question is, will this thing actually deliver?
Right. Like another example would be, hey, if one of your values was like, and one of ours, we have a joke at Best Hours, like, but it's similar at CrossFit Rife. But like one of the values is team. And the joke is everybody just says team a million times. They're just like team. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? Well, it means we invest in the team. We want to grow the team. We want people that want to be here, and we want them to love their job because the expectation is that you work really, really hard. Okay. We can't just be like, hey, we have a team that works hard. We'll have to make sure the team gets fed. I need to make sure that they're taken care of. I need to make sure that we can develop their skills. I need them to be better next year than they were this year, which means I'm going to have to foot the bill on some of their growth and development. Oh, you want to do this? Got it. I'll pay for it. You want to do this? Got it. I'll pay for it. Right. But that's in line with, oh, that was part of the value, right? Like that's what we were shooting for, was like that. We wanted to make sure that we grew and developed the team. And that makes me say no to other things like, hey, we need to do this. And we need, I don't know, make stuff up. We need new sleds, or we need to, paint the bathrooms and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, actually, I need to make sure that the team gets taken care of first, and then we'll get to that one later. And by the way, there's a line item for that too. It's a separate line item.
Yeah. Well, okay. So like, let's take this like full circle, or even maybe one layer deeper is a better way to say this, because here's what's cool is like, so let's say that you've got a vision clarified for your personal life that includes you running, in your case, let's say that includes running a gym that really values and prioritizes their team.
Okay.
Well, what do you think the logical then step is to do from there? It's going to be at some point to try as the owner to understand what are the personal visions that my team members have for their life?
Right.
Like, do they want to level up? Do they want to pursue more certifications? Do they want to take on more responsibility? Do they want to compete themselves? Do they want to be able to just make enough money to like take home a certain amount so that they can do what they want to personally for their family? Like, what is the vision that they have? And then how can you make sure that as you're growing, if they're really good and you want to keep them around, that you're able to help do that for them? Because that's a part of your vision, is to help them complete their vision. And and it's just like, it's just a fancy word for saying like goals and priorities. That's it.
Right. And again, going back to, the goals become, whatever is it, 300% more likely to be achieved once you write them down. You got to write them down, and then you got to stress test them, and then don't be afraid to change them. If you're like, oh, this really doesn't make any sense, or I don't like this anymore, or that was my 25-year-old core value, which is very different than my 45-year-old value, which it probably should be, then change it. At which point, like, you change your habits, you change what you prioritize, you change what you spend on, you change who you spend your time with, you change who invests your time in. Like, all these things start to matter, including your money, because again, money is a vehicle, right? It's not the point. It's a vehicle in order to get you from A to B, and recognizing that, and they'd be like, oh, well, it'd be nice if I had an efficient vehicle, and it'd be nice if that vehicle had a GPS in it. So I would generally just could figure out if I was going in the right direction.
Totally.
And that's what we're talking about. Because money is, I could say this confidently, money is for 9.9% or 9.9 out of 10 gym owners, 9.9 out of 10. So 99.9%. Money is one of their biggest hurdles.
Yeah. And
it's not just that they don't know how to budget money. There's a couple layers past that. One is they don't know what they want to spend their money on. They have no desire. They have no description of what the future would look like and what they want to design. And then they have no guardrails in order to get there.
Yeah.
At which point, you're not getting there. You're not getting to any goal without any of those things. But understanding however you feel about money, you are running a business and money is part of the equation. Now just use it effectively is really what we're trying to teach everybody here, because whether you have more of it or less of it or the same amount of it, I would argue that using it more effectively is going to benefit you either way.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Well, and all you're doing is you're trying to run with your arms tied behind your back if you're not budgeting, if you're not doing this thing. Like, can you run a business and not do this? I guess, but it'd be a whole lot easier if you just
only for so long.
Only for so long. Yeah.
And where I was going to go with that is only for so long, because inevitably, just like in life, something is going to go wrong.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and going back to the vision helps you manage your money better, which helps you dispel with fears of the future, because I know how to navigate the future. And one of the things I talked about at the mastermind recently was like the vast majority of people's fears are due to lack of information. Yeah. Part of that information is not just like how much money you have and all of that kind of, just like ultimately, what do I want my money to go to? Yeah. And that one's not so obvious, because typically when we're talking about money, we're talking about the immediate, like, can I spend it? Can I not spend it?
Yep.
Okay. Well, it matters like what I want to spend it on, because now I can say no to certain things, but hey, that's not a priority. We're going to do something a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, and like, maybe this will be kind of a fun way to say this. So going back to what you said with the example of the eating out, the dining out with your friends, that you're able to pick up the bill. This is where, and maybe we could talk about this in a future episode, but like the way that mindset around money impacts like a lot of other things. One of the things that I've personally struggled with over the last, I don't know, decade and a half, like until I started figuring some of the stuff out, was a lot of fear around not being adequately prepared for whatever with money. And so what you just said, a lot of the fear can be like dispelled with information. I really like that. And I was just thinking about eating out examples. I can pinpoint a number of fights that I've had with Hannah where we are out with friends or family and she wants to pick up the bill. And this is pre us budgeting and having a game plan and working together.
You're like, we're broke.
And I'm like, no, no, like, no. And she's like nudging me like, hey, what do you think?
Like, I'm like, I think they should pay for their own food. That's what I think. Yeah.
Like, absolutely. And it's like, but in reality, we might've been totally fine. I just didn't have the plan to tell me, hey dude, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
And I distinctly, I actually remember thinking about you when I did that. I went and looked at it beforehand, because you're like, look before you spend. It's not because I was worried about it. I was actually the other way. I was just like, how big of a bill can I cover? If it gets like really outrageous, I still want to feel good about it. Yeah. And the bill was large, and I was like totally fine with it. But I was like, oh, we're good. Like, great. Let's do it. Like, let's go. I don't care.
Cranks the enjoyment up to like,
I was so much happier. Yeah. Like, I was so happy to be able to do that. Not because it made me look good, but I don't even know if it did make me look good, but that wasn't the intent. It's because that's what I wanted to do. That's what it was for. That's who I wanted to spend my time with. Yep. And if I could give them the gift of not having to spend money for that dinner because I had planned for it, great, even better.
Yeah. And imagine, right? So imagine going back to like the box and the team example. Imagine sending someone on your team off to get their next certification, or to help cover part of that, or to help pay for the whole thing, or to whatever. Imagine doing that and stressing about it and putting on a credit card, not budgeting, and like you're like, I really want to help them, but like, versus like,
I'm getting ready to do that for like Lindsay and Cassie and I are going to take our level 4 in October. Perfect. I'm footing the bill for that, and some people are like, well, your gym makes more money than it doesn't matter how much money the gym makes. Yeah, that was planned.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't, I just shit thousands of dollars.
Yep.
Like, and I didn't think twice about it. No, it's actually the exact opposite. I had been planning that for quite some time.
Totally.
And like, for lack of better terms, squirreling away money.
Yeah.
So that when it came up, I was just like, yeah, there we go. Let's do it. Let's go. Let's get it done. So that I executed it just like everybody executed, whether you're going to buy an Echo bike or whether you're going to pay for multiple people's next certification, the process is still the same.
Yep. And the emotions matter. Like they can feel, I guarantee that they can feel that you're not stressed about it and that you really want to send them off to do that. And
100%.
if you were like, well, okay, I can help you with that, but like you're freaking out about it.
Right.
They're going to know that.
They know.
That. Like
they're not dummies.
Yeah. So it's at the end of the day, your gym and your personal life are so intertwined. And so like, if you are trying to sit down and answer questions about what do I do with this money in my gym and how do I make decisions, you have to have a clear picture of what you want in your personal life and then how that informs what you want in the gym. And then we can answer those questions.
One last question, because this kind of leads into the next one. I might step on my own feet here. What is the most likely group of people to not budget with regard to like the amount of money they have? Is it people that have none or the people that have a lot?
I mean, it's probably most likely in the people that have a lot, but I see it on the extremes, which is like,
right.
I see a lot of people who like are in such a terrible place financially that they would just rather stick their head in the sand.
Right.
Right. It's like the guy that needs to lose 100 pounds before he even gets down to a healthy weight. It's like at this point, they feel so far gone, they're hopeless. And so they're like, I'm not budgeting.
That's fair. I've had this conversation with a couple people lately and like, I mean, I'm good on money. And I'm like, which is the exact reason that I was like, you're the person who should budget arguably the most 100%. because now you can actually realize whatever it is that you're asking the world for. Yep. You could do it right now, but like, you just don't know and you're not managing it appropriately. I'm like, you are cash flow heavy and there is no better time to budget because now you can start pointing that vehicle at all the things and all the places that you want to go. Yep. So it's easier to budget when you have more money.
People don't want
budgeting when you're broke is the most painful thing of all time.
Yeah. And like, it's good that it helps, but it's not fun.
It's not fun.
Yeah. It's like, imagine you're just dialing it up. You're just dialing things up a little bit more. And if your dial's already turned up because you've got a decent cash flow, doing this will be like pouring rocket fuel on it. Like it's just, it's only
start checking the boxes on all your lifelong visions. You're like, yes. Yeah. That's when I argue it gets fun. It's so fun. You're like, oh, it gets fun now. Yeah. So, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. So we're going to talk into, if you're not budgeting and tracking, outsourcing your bookkeeping and some other things, staffing issues, credit card debt, which is a big one. Yep. I want to talk about that.
Yep.
And then people that aren't paying themselves and not planning, on a proper timeline. So next episode, we're going to get into quite a few of those different things, but it starts here because you can't do any of those other things unless you get real clear on some things on the front end.
100%.
All right, guys, stick around for next episode. We'll see you then. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Best Hour of Their Day podcast. We appreciate you listening and choosing to have us help you in your passion for coaching and affiliate ownership. You can find more episodes just like this on all podcast platforms. If you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to us on any social media platforms, or you can visit www.besthouroftheirday.com to book a call. If you found this episode helpful for you, please share it so that we can help other coaches and affiliate owners to help build a bigger and stronger CrossFit community. Thanks for listening.